What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, reviewing today Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. You know what I've sort of noticed over the course of the last couple decades is that there are certain series that just develop a huge cult following. Things like The Legend of Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, and of course, the whip-swinging Castlevania. These are franchises that establish a very unique fan base because they play unlike anything else. But Castlevania specifically really has a big place in my heart because it really pretty much has gameplay that only it has. It's pretty much its own genre completely by itself. Which is why it's a little bit unfortunate that over the course of the last few years, Konami has just completely left behind this style of action and adventure. This is pretty sad, but luckily, it's not where the story of Castlevania actually ends. Igarashi, somebody who's pretty much the godfather of this entire Metroidvania style, well, he decided to go to Kickstarter and tried crowdfund a spiritual sequel, and after managing to raise nearly $6 million from backers, he set out to do it. Well, here we are, fast forwarding 5 years later, and I finally have this game just sitting in my console, and I'm still shocked that it's real, but I'm here to tell you, it's really good. In fact, I'll say that this is probably my favorite Kickstarter game ever by a huge margin, but it still has some technical issues that we need to get into. Now, for this adventure, we are playing as a young woman named Miriam. Now, she's somebody called a shardbinder. These are humans who have been forcibly infused with demonic energies bound to crystals all throughout her body. This was initially used as part of a dark ceremony that ended up unleashing everything beyond the gates of hell. This universe is pretty much destroyed by all the ravenous demons that of course sprung forth and ate everybody, but luckily Miriam herself managed to survive this ordeal, and now as one of the few remaining shardbinders, she's going to try and basically stop all this by using the power of demons against them. I have to say, the mechanics in this game are so freaking good. Now, when it comes to 2D action games, something I just love more than anything else is options. I love being able to figure out how I'm going to fight a boss, how I'm going to get the next weapon, how I'm going to just get into the next big situation. There are, by my count, probably 100 different ways to fight, and that is so intensely great. So just initially, let's talk about hand-to-hand combat, just the basic swords, shields, weapons, things like that. Now, Miriam is very well trained at pretty much anything you can pick up. There are firearms that you can shoot and take additional ammo, but I like the stuff that lets me swing a blade and just really clash it into a demon's face myself. There are maces, there's giant two-handed blades, there's things that can actually be magic swords that'll fly away from your body like a boomerang and come back to your hand. But what you'll notice is that each one of these has very different stats. Being able to actually handle the different crazy foes that just completely crowd your path in this ongoingly complicated dungeon requires perpetual upgrades. You need to keep going back to town to try and fix your gear and try and buy new stuff that'll make it even stronger in the future. So basically, we're trying to go into this giant crazy castle that magically appeared, and there are people that we're going to save throughout the journey who will do different stuff for us. Some will plant crops, that way we can grow food to make ourselves have a better diet. Some of them will do things like use alchemy to infuse your different gear with power-ups, and some of them will actually give you special bounties, so if you kill a certain amount of enemies, they'll make it where you get giant special rewards. It basically creates this giant system of craft, kill, create, love. I mean, there's just so much in this, but the basic melee combat is so fun because it basically supplements every other style of combat in this. So obviously the main thing that makes Miriam different than anybody else who's on this adventure is the fact that she is a shardbinder, and what that means is that when you're killing enemies, occasionally they'll spin out these little crystals that get sucked into your body and give you some sort of gift from the demon you killed. Now these are a huge wide range between things that are like very direct magic abilities, there's directional ones, like this is my favorite one where I can turn my hand into a chainsaw blade, which is great for grinding people's brains out, but then there's also passive ones where I can make it where all my two-handed attacks are faster, or the ability to actually have minions that'll follow me around, like this little nymph that actually floats along beside me doing ranged attacks to just kind of give me extra damage per second. Each of these is basically pieces of equipment that create your own style of play. And what's really cool to it is that you can go back and by spending the different resources you've gathered, you can upgrade the ones that to you are the best. You can basically try and create your own style of combat, and I do think that some of them are definitely a lot better than others. Like one I discovered about halfway through the game is the ability to actually transform myself into a little scantily clad bunny girl, and her damage was good, her attacks were swift, but I noticed that it was just constantly draining my mana a little bit faster than I liked. It essentially made it where I had like an ultimate combat mode, but it had a very short timeline on it. This was cool because it basically made it where, alright, if I keep upgrading my mana by discovering secrets, this could be practically overpowered, or I could try and just play it safe and keep using my two-hander to chop stuff up. You need to constantly upgrade stuff, and you need to constantly be on the lookout for more secrets, that way you can stay strong enough to keep fighting, because everything gets way stronger over time. Essentially what I'm trying to tell you is that you are going to have to occasionally stop and level up. I mean, this is not a choice. The bosses are very hard in this game sometimes, so whenever you find a new area, I highly recommend that what you do is just go around and kill stuff over and over again, because A, this will give you more experience points, that way you'll level up your attack damage and of course your health itself, but additionally it provides the benefit of you never know what shards you're going to unlock. It is completely random. Like here's just a crazy example. As I was running along here, you can see I got just 4 different shards completely by luck in less than 1 minute. It's basically one of those things where you need to constantly be grinding to try and upgrade every aspect of yourself so you can have tons of different options for each fight. Now just for a bit here, I do want to talk about some of the issues I encountered. Now this stuff is all being recorded with the day 1 patch. I did have this game before release, but even with the day 1 patch, there are some strange glitches and technical problems that just seem to be persistent. Not a lot, it's a couple frame rate drops. I notice enemies that can block will occasionally freeze in the middle of a block, but it's not that big of an issue. There are some glitches though that became much more annoying. Like one thing I encountered was that if an enemy poisoned me, it would actually lock my controller's vibration on. Like here I'm actually filming the screen to show you my controller is full blast vibrating and running its battery dead, and you can see on the screen itself I have vibration turned off completely, and yet it's a problem that persists. These glitches are minor and not that often, they're just something that kind of exist in the background as things that I encountered here and there. Some of the only real issues I have with the gameplay itself is that occasionally there'd be these times where the game wanted to try and do something different. So obviously this is a 2.5D adventure. Everything is just side-scrolling, it looks cool, it's artistic, it's got like an anime aesthetic, but occasionally it tries to go a little bit more 3D, and it's very frustrating when it does this, because there will be times where you're trying to platform, but it's very difficult to know where the heck you're actually supposed to land, because your feet are just kind of curving around as you're jumping. It really is just one of those things that clearly probably sounded better while they were tinkering with it and is just not functional in action. Now these are pretty rare, there's very few of these big twisty 3D areas, and for the most part the game is very 2D and very gorgeous if I'm being honest. When I first saw the aesthetic, I was a little bit put off because it seemed a little bit too, well, on the nose anime, and I think that once you adapt to it, it's fantastic. There aren't a lot of cutscenes in this, and there are some like hand-drawn art pieces, but for the most part, this is just one of those games that it starts, you keep fighting, and it doesn't end until the credits roll. It is non-stop, intense, crazy combat as you go from area to area, castle to castle, kill to kill, until the very end, and that's what I love about it. This is, in a way, one of my very favorite Castlevanias, because it just feels like it's trying to take the ideas it likes and abandons the stuff it doesn't. Now, in this this video, I'm trying to avoid too many spoilers because there are some pretty big surprises in this that I guarantee you could not possibly even guess. This is a good game that tries to blow your mind even if you're not a super diehard fan of Castlevania or the things it's trying to pay an homage to. It's good, it's great, but of course it's not quite perfect. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Bloodstained Ritual of the Night an 8.5 out of 10. Just for full disclosure, I did not back this game on Kickstarter, I just enjoyed it. I bought this copy myself, I really had fun with it, and honestly, this is one of those things that I'm going to be putting on my shelf and happily looking back on. There are some additional modes that I've unlocked now that I do want to try out now that I've beaten it, and I'm really just kind of pumped to see what else will be put in this game in the future, because I have heard some talk about DLC down the line, and I'll probably see that as well, just because more bosses and more kills is definitely a very good time. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.